Hi, welcome to episode 21 of Talk About the Passion. Today's episode is called Values Here. It's a conversation with my friend Christopher Lordan. I've known Chris since the 80s when we were both growing up on the North Shore. We didn't hang out really, but he was someone I would see around regularly, and as you did in those days, especially so long before social media, you connected with kids with similar interests: skateboarding, music, playing music, ordering Chinese stars out of magazines, that kind of thing. The other reason is that, I consider Chris someone with some pretty respectable values too. So, and usually before I put these intros on these and mix them, I'll sort of live with the recording for a few days, playing it over and over and sort of getting it stuck in my head, making sure there's nothing wrong and that kind of thing. This one I noticed is, it's 48 minutes long, and it's just about exactly split into thirds, like almost like 16-minute sections. And the first third we talk about music, the second we talk about his work in education, and then we close it off talking about the book he wrote. And, as you'll hear, Chris is a well-spoken guy, and his ideas on, life, especially when he talks about how he interacts with kids in the school he works at, is spot on, if you ask me. I won't get too into the book here in the intro, as he tells the story pretty well. And I'm just about done with it myself, and it's a really great read. There's some truly unbelievable stuff that happens, and but also some pretty intense and sad passages. Chris talks about where you can buy the book, which I suggest you do, and I'm sure you'll want to after listening to him. But here's the other thing. I have 2 copies of the book, my own copy, and one I'd like to give you, the listener. Well, most likely not you. Someone else probably won it, so sorry. But here's all you have to do. Send me an email at talkaboutthep@gmail.com, and yes, that email address really exists as of about 7 minutes before I recorded this. I realized I need a email address for this podcast, and talkaboutthepassion@gmail.com wasn't available, but talkaboutthep, just the letter P, at gmail.com was available. So so send me an email at that and answer this question. How many times did Chris's uncle Robert escape from prison? Answer that, and whoever sends me the first one will win a copy of the book. I'll mail it to you, and okay, this is I'm rambling a little here. So a couple of more things, quick things before we start. Anyway, I'm on social media. If you search for Talk About the Passion podcast, you should be able to find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Same goes for wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find me there, and definitely subscribe if you like what you hear. Then you won't miss any new episodes, and if you have a second, you can also give me a review on iTunes. That kind of helps out, and and if you or anyone would like to be on an episode, send me a message again to that email, talkaboutthep@gmail.com, and we can set something up. Anyway, here is episode 21 with Christopher Lordan, and thanks for listening. So I'm here with my friend Chris Lordan. Mm-hmm. We met probably when we were teenagers in
definitely
the North Shore here in the 80s.
Yep.
And where did you grow up here?
I grew up in the town of Middleton. Mm-hmm. So I went to Masconomet and had a lot of friends in the Danvers, Peabody, Salem area. So we ended up crossing paths a lot just from the locality without even going into Boston.
Right.
Yeah, and Rocket Records, of course. Yeah. Rocket Records is always, that's all goes back to there for so many people.
Yeah. So early on, did you have like someone in your life get you into music and that kind of thing?
I did. I had a couple of friends who had older brothers, which is kind of a classic story for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I listened to WM, just like a lot of people did as well. That was the only thing you could find, kind of experimenting at the lower end of the dial, tape recording off the radio, making your own mixes. And then I had a friend who was a DJ at I forget which station it was. It was a local station and had a decent record collection. Yeah. And just kind of started exposing me to all the bands that I eventually went on to, become huge fans of. But they were all coming in all like very piecemeal, and I didn't know the relationships between them. It was just very random. Right.
Who were some of the bands?
It would be like, I got like the Boston, not LA kind of bands going. So like the older stuff, which is the first wave. And then you'd hear, Dag Nasty or you'd hear Verbal Assault or bands like that. And then, then throwing in Angry Samoans and DRI or just whatever was out there. And I loved it all. It was great.
Do you remember any records that like hit you and like sort of like a life-changing?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And the first one that always comes to mind is just Dag Nasty, Can I Say? Yeah. Which I know a lot of other people cite. And I remember exactly the first time I heard it because I was in Rocket Records. Oh, yeah. And, everybody knew Al Quint was the man. Yeah. And I was just a kid and it had just come out and he said, you have to buy this record. Yeah. And I was asking him about bands and he said, this band is unbelievable. And he put it on in the store for me to hear. Yeah. And, by the first track, I was already pulling out my money. And I went home and listened to that, a billion times. And I still listen to it to this day. Oh, yeah. I still think it's great. It held the test of time. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely.
Do you go any further with Dag Nasty after that album?
I'm a Wig Out fan. Beyond that, it gets a little dicey. But I did see them. I went down to New Jersey last year for Punk Rock Bowling. And Dag Nasty played with Sean Brown, and it was awesome. Yeah. I loved it.
Yeah. I think that they're playing at the end of the month down in Jersey. And I'm
nice.
Contemplating going because I haven't.
Yeah, it was pretty great. It wasn't the Dave Smalley lineup, but I still totally enjoyed it, and that was a game changer for me. That was the perfect blend of the the aggression of punk with melody, and then what I know it's a dirty word now, but like emo-y type lyrics, personalized lyrics. They weren't angry at the government. I was too young to have those kinds of feelings just yet, and about smashing the system. I wasn't sure what the system exactly was, but I was 15. But lyrics that kind of spoke to you about not being afraid to be an individual and things like that did speak to me, and they always kind of stuck with me.
Yeah, and I think them and sort of Embrace and
I love that record so much.
Was that same era where and even 7 Seconds. We were talking about them before we started recording, but they had sort of that political stuff, but then they kind of started getting into the more like we just said, like emo stuff. So,
which is a pretty bold thing to do in a punk rock scene at that time. For sure.
Definitely,
most definitely. But I definitely loved it. And what I always liked about it is I do recall like seeing 7 Seconds, that show we were talking about. Yeah. And you could just walk up to these guys right after they played and speak with them. Yeah, yeah. You're just a young guy, and they would be super cool. Yeah. That was my experience. Everyone has that like, the guy was a dick story, but like I have several. He was super cool stories. Yeah, yeah. And even a legendarily not nice guy like Brian Baker was super nice to me. Yeah, yeah. And like, I never forgot that. He took his time to speak with me and answer my questions, and ask me questions like he cared. Yeah. He's like, what do you think of our record? And I was like, this is wild. Yeah. And I always thought that was super cool that they weren't rock stars. You could just walk up to Kevin Seconds and say, hey, I liked your set today. And he'd be like sincerely thanking you. Like he was genuinely like excited that you cared.
Yeah. And he seems to still be like that. Like,
he does. And that's why I think he's been around for so long. He's always connected with people.
Yeah, I think those are the people that I've always admired in the hardcore scene. The ones with sort of integrity like that, and just the down to earth.
Yeah, most definitely. They weren't trying to be like rock stars on a small level. They were just like they loved playing. Yeah. It wasn't about money. Yeah, it wasn't about any of that kind of stuff. It was just like there was something. It was a labor of love.
Yeah. Were you identifying with straight edge at that point?
Sure. Yeah. When I was younger, the bands that I loved the most kind of came out of that, and being from Boston too, like the best bands came out of there, and I also like the New York stuff. Yeah. And when you're younger, it seemed to be a form of rebellion to go against what your peers were doing. Yeah. My parents were super cool. They were always awesome. They let me do the things I liked, and I had guidelines and rules, but I wasn't rebelling against them or against the government. It was sort of like the people around me, there was a pack mentality of like, this is cool and this is not, and it was handed to you, and I never liked that, and I was kind of never felt comfortable with that, and so it was a rebellious thing to say, well, I'm not going to drink, or I'm not going to, we're not going to do those types of things that is typical that today you would call like a basic bro. Like that's what I felt like I was going against. It's like, well, I'm not going to do that. I don't feel like doing that. And that was an important thing. And then the music was especially hard too. And it went along with that. It was dovetailed with my favorite stuff. I said, oh, this is prepackaged for a guy like me. So if it hits you right, and I feel like it did for me. And that was an important part for, a pretty long time. Until and I'm going to say something many other people have said, which is it reached an off-putting level later on down the line because it started changing into something else. And I know I've heard a lot of other people talk about the same thing, but it's true. It's saying like bringing in like veganism or Christian principles. Not that I have a problem with those things, but somebody suddenly telling you that this is what it is, and you had been into it for quite some time already, and you said, well, no, this is my version of it. And that became a bit off-putting. Then it became like sort of like had come full circle, and the things you were rebelling against became as judgmental and strict and rule-based as the things you were trying to get away from to start with.
Yeah, definitely. Because it was kind of an escape for people like us too, in this, like living in the suburbs. It was football players, and I was briefly straight edge in high school. And we would do things where we'd be like, I'd bring like a 6-pack of Sprite to like a party and be like, you guys, drink 6 fucking beers. We're going to drink 6 Sprite, And then we'd leave the party and call the police and be like, there's a bunch of teenagers drinking it.
That's fucking funny. I'd like to think that I was doing it for, my heart was in the right place, and I was doing it because it felt right at the time. And I still tried not to judge other people. I would still would go to a party and stuff, and if people were drinking, I didn't want to see anybody doing unsafe things, but the whole point was like, hey, you do your thing and I'll do mine, and we can both respect it.
I think that was sort of like Ian Mackay and Al Burrell and those guys always kind of talk about it. Was just, this was another choice that we wanted to take, and it was it wasn't supposed to be like this militant thing. It was just like, this is another choice of thing you can do as a teenager or a young kid. And
it's like, not to say I didn't get in trouble or do things I wasn't supposed to do. I still did like risky, dumb things for a laugh or whatever it might have been. But it was all supposed to be in good fun. It wasn't self-destructive, or I'm just going to get messed up on drugs and just go that route. Because I knew that was I just thought that was like a loser path, and I didn't want to do it. If other people did, I didn't necessarily, have bad feelings about it, but I just didn't like seeing people that I cared about doing destructive things to themselves. And that holds true to today.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think when I met you were also in a band. I was in a band since I was probably like 15. You start out with your friends, and nobody knows how to play anything, and you kind of learn together. And that was an awesome thing through high school. Like we would practice. One of my friends' parents, they wouldn't come home from work till 7 or 8 at night, and we would just all go there almost every day after school. And that's where I started to learn how to play. And we would just play like every day. The songs weren't that good, but they were tight. We had bad gear, and we weren't musically inclined just yet. And but it was an awesome thing. That was like, other people were going to do sports or go to their job or do whatever they do. So it was a pretty positive thing. I thought it was a creative outlet, and it was something that I got to hang out with my friends, but we were also doing something creative, and that was pretty nice. So I did that all through high school, and basically, here I am. I'm 46 years old, and I've been in a band since that time till today. With the exception of maybe 6 months, I've always been in a band. So it's something that I never grew out of. I thought that by the time I was in my late 20s, I would hang it up and sell my gear and do something else. But it's just it never really went away. Of course, you can't do it on the level that you did when you were younger, when you have like a real job and all that stuff. But I think it's important to just keep doing it, even though, the whole point never was to make money or make it my job. So there's that right there. But there were periods of time where you put more effort and energy and time into it because you can just see where it goes. And then you reach a point where I'm like, well, I don't think I should quit altogether because I'm not in the position to tour or anything like that. I still want to do something creative and still make some music. And now there's different formats. You can just put it up online and see who likes it. And that's very cool too. I just saw that and I think you guys were on that Boston Hardcore, the Tang. They're going to reissue
I was reading about that, which would be really cool. I know some people were talking about, none of the bands got paid, and I'm indifferent. I mean, I know somebody's making money, but I thought it was awesome to be on the compilation.
Yeah,
and I loved all the bands on there. It was just a bunch of, it captured that moment in time, which was a great period of time.
That was a great period of hardcore in Boston, I thought.
Which bands from that did you favor the most from that time period?
Let me see. I loved Eye for an Eye. I thought they were great.
I always was sad that they didn't go further than I always thought they should have. They should have been huge.
They seemed like they were sort of on their way to be like another. I don't know, not 7 seconds, but that sort of level of just sort of like
as
a
big
big
as
name.
Burn or any. I know everybody was made the Burn comparisons because they had African American singers, but I think it was they played together a lot too, and they were friendly. But I think they definitely should have been like a headlining status, and had they stuck around another couple of years, I think it would have been really great. And it was they were taking a new path musically too, and I was interested in seeing where that was going. So kind of a sad what could have been. That's happened to a lot of bands too.
Yeah, they had that song sort of later on that sounded like the Charlie Brown theme. I think the bass line. Kevin
great musicians, and they definitely were a step ahead or step or two ahead of most of the bands at the time. So it was cool to watch them like get better and better. And but you put 4 strong personalities in a band, and
definitely.
you know what's going to happen there most times.
Going backwards a little, do you remember the first like hardcore show you went to?
I do. The first like legitimate show, I think I might have went to 1 or 2 like hall shows or something like with just kids bands and stuff, but the first legitimate show I went to was December '85. I went to see the Circle Jerks and Gangrene at the Channel. You were probably there. I think I bought a ticket at Rocket, and that was the cliche life changer for me. I went there, and it was the first time I saw all these people that I'd never seen before. And back then people didn't have purple mohawks and shaved heads and stuff. So and you'd see like a girl with like a skinhead girl, and like I'd never seen any of that stuff, and it freaked me out and terrified me, but I loved it. And you had to go to those shows to collect flyers to find out when the other ones were. And I thought that was really cool. It was this big like underground secret society, and I was completely fascinated by all that. And that was a great show. And I bumped into somewhere like maybe towards the end of the show, I bumped into Chris Doherty from Gangrene. And I talked to him, and he was like the nicest, coolest guy ever to me. He was so nice to me. And that really made an impression back to kind of like Brian Baker and some of the other guys being like really nice to me. I remember thinking like these guys like care about the people who come and see them. They're genuinely grateful that you shelled out $8 or whatever to see their band. And that you took time out of your life to come watch them play.
Definitely.
So that made an impression on me. So that was the first big show that I think I went to at the Channel, which there's so many awesome shows there later on. And I missed so many too, simply by not knowing. Like I was around when Black Flag was playing. I just never caught them. And I remember somebody saying, "Oh, don't worry, they come through all the time." And then I never saw them. They went on to be one of my favorite bands. And I never caught them back in the day.
I think that too, with like this little underground network on the Mike Hill's podcast that we were talking about earlier, the interview with Mike Gitter. Gitter talks about when you got involved in the hardcore scene, he's like, everyone had a job. Like, it's kind of true. Like, literally everyone was either in a band or did a zine or made flyers. It really was like a network. It was
everybody participated on some level, and even just showing up regularly and supporting was being a part of it. And like, I would see you at Rocket Records, and then I'd maybe see you at the mall or something. But then I saw that guy at TT's last week, and you just start recognizing the other people because they weren't everywhere. And you just started to pick those people out of a crowd. All you had to do was wear a certain T-shirt, and like I knew that I should go over and talk to you. That kind of a thing.
Definitely.
And you grew up in Swampscott, right?
Swampscott,
Yep, so all North Shore people.
No, I know. It was a small world of, and when I was in high school, there was me and maybe one or two other people that were sort of.
That's pretty much the same for me. So just a couple of other people, and then you would maybe find out about some kids skateboarding. So you would just go and see what they were doing. And kind of just hang out until you knew each other's names.
It's weird to think that there was like the Beverly people and the.
Because there was no Facebook, so you had to kind of find each other. So it was very different, and but there was something pretty cool about it. I know kids do it a different way today, and there's an efficiency to it that's nice. You can, but there's no adventure and discovery anymore. Now it's just like if you know how to spell, you can find anything like now on your phone. So
I know, it's
so
crazy.
When I work in education, so I talk to kids all the time, and I see kids who are getting into the music that I know I would probably like if I were 17 right now. And I always talk to them about like how they discovered what they're now into. And you can see that although it's music that you and I might not like, or we just kind of roll our eyes, it's derivative, or this band was better. It means the same thing to them.
Exactly.
What we've discovered back then. So I never like dismiss it for them. I think I hated when people did that to me when I was younger. So just a few years older, roll their eyes at your favorite band.
What's this crap? Right.
And I kind of vowed to never do that. I'm like, no, like, and they'll give me a tape of their favorite band, and I'm like, a tape. Like nobody's giving me a tape, but they'll like, send me MP3s or something, and I will listen to it, and I'll ask them what they like about it. And they're very enthusiastic, and I was like, I can always endorse that. I just encourage them, listen to more stuff, just keep playing, put shows together, and you see kids, really taking charge and like going to set up hall shows and renting PAs and doing all that, like really embracing DIY. So that's never gone away, really. If there's no venue, they make one. And I think that's awesome that they still do that.
So you've been a teacher in education now? I've
been in education since 2003.
Okay.
And I taught for a long time, and in the last couple of years I went into administration. So now I do a lot of unfortunately I do a lot of things like that resemble police work and social work, and so I wear a lot of different hats now, helping run the school. And I got a school of 1,300 kids running around, and so I deal with stupid things like vaping and all that, but I also deal with kids who might have like deep psychological issues and or some kids homeless, or so there's a lot of heartbreaking stories out there that come your way, and then but I still always reference, my frame of reference is going back to those super important days when I was going to shows, those formative years, and I always try to keep that at the forefront of my head when I'm talking to young people. About this is their experience, because it's easy to dismiss what they're going through as dramatic, or overstated, but to them it means the world. And I remember things that meant the world to me back then, which, are trivial now, but at the time, so it's all that matter of perspective. And those formative years are pretty important to set you what kind of adult you're going to be later on. So I've been in education for a while now. I had a legal career before that.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, so I was an attorney for a while.
Okay.
Yeah, I went to law school, and I was a prosecutor for a while. I did a lot of drug cases. You probably didn't know that about me, but I did that for several years. I ended up kind of specializing drug cases, and again, coming across young people who had already kind of like destroyed their lives. And here I am, not helping them, but sort of like I'm on the back end. They've already gotten in trouble. Now it's my turn to step up and make sure they get punished. And something about that never set with me very well, is that so this kid seems, take away the drugs and you have a pretty good kid. They kind of seem to need help more than they need punishment. And so that was something that always kind of made it hard to fully embrace that type of work. So it was just real, like I was already post-intervention, and I was always thinking if there was some way to work with young people before they went down a bad path, that would be pretty cool to me. That was something you could get some gratification out of. And it just so happened I'm from a family of teachers, and I always kind of enjoyed that work, and I sort of started teaching a couple college classes, doing legal, like criminal law and constitutional law. And then I found a job where I could teach that to young people. It was like the marriage of two things that I was interested in. So that worked out really nice.
And you think growing up in the hardcore scene influences a lot of just what you do in your work too?
Most definitely, absolutely. I mean,
trace it back to
most definitely, absolutely. And I've talked about this a lot with my peers who were around back then, like Taz Niles definitely being one of them. I know that he's a businessman now, but he has this full presentation that he ties back to the DIY ethic. And most of the people he's speaking to don't know that that's the origins of it, but I know exactly where it came from and where it was inspired from. For myself, dealing in the business of young people and helping to some small degree help shape their lives and like where they're going. Some of the things that I learned from that I can transfer from back then was just being open-minded, like the scene I always thought was supposed to be diverse. He was supposed to be like cool with everybody and like kind of like be exposed to other people's thought patterns and what their flavors were, and take or reject what you wanted from that, but just kind of like accept people as good people regardless of their background. So that's a big piece of it, and that's something I always try to hand down. I don't want to preach to kids. I rarely ever do. Once in a while you have to give them that fatherly talk, but for the most part, like kind of cultivating that idea of like, look, you're still in a town that you were born in, and one day you're going to be passing these borders and going out further and meeting other people who aren't just like you and don't have the exact same experiences of you. And that's an exciting thing. And you should embrace that and learn from that instead of be scared of it, and reject it and run away from it and make fun of it. Just kind of take people for who they are. And something I have noticed is things aren't as homogenous as they once were. I looked at my yearbook from 1989 and everybody had the same, like 1 or 2 different haircuts. Everyone, boys and girls. And and now you see like there'll be a kid who looks like a heavy metal dude, but he's on the track team. He's in a
it is different.
So people can kind of cross lines with much more ease. Being gay is way more accepted. I wouldn't say it's all the way there, but it's like, kids aren't afraid to hold hands in public in a school. You know, that I think what would have happened back in 88 if you saw that.
Because I got called the F word as a and I wasn't even, it was just because I had,
because you were different.
Because I wore so whatever I was wearing, and even like, I remember a cop in Swampscott calling me that at one point.
I witnessed the cop call my friend that, and it was just, you didn't really think too much about like how hurtful that would have been until later on you find out that you did have gay friends, but they were scared to admit it. Then you thought about back to, what did I say back then? I didn't mean it, but I wasn't saying it with venom and hate. It was just kind of what everyone said, and like saying retard and things like that, and like those things aren't acceptable now. And part of me wants to reject like PC police, but the other part of me is like, well, it was never correct. It was never okay in the first place. And I guess after you meet people and you come across other people who've suffered or struggled, that that is an insensitive, uncool thing to say. Like, I don't just make fun of cancer victims and if someone's mom died of cancer. It's a similar kind of thing.
Exactly.
I don't think it's cool to do.
No. My last job, I worked with a bunch of kids in their 20s, and one of them constantly was like, that's gay. And one day I was like, you know what, dude, you gotta like
just stop.
I was like, me, I joke about anything. I don't really have a filter, but and he's like, he got pissed at me, and I said, in a few years you'll probably figure out what I mean, but it's just as when I'm just as guilty as saying it because I'm around. But like, if you said something to me right now, like, we're drinking these gay little sparkling waters right now, I might chuckle. But like, if you kept saying it, like, why do you have these gay candles on the table? I'd be like, does he really have a problem? I'd start because I know you're not like that. I could chuckle if you use it because it's intentionally off color, but somebody who's constantly using it is, there's a difference, and you start to pick up on that right away. Do you use experiences, growing up in high school where we didn't have like, bullying and sort of all the problems that seem to be in teenagers now? Sure.
I mean, the bullying is, the whole game is expanded to everything that you can do online. So now so much of what I see isn't the classic, some kid got stuffed in a locker. That, I won't say it's gone, but it's gone way down from, I think, back in the older days. Plus, if you reported it back in our time, people would tell you to go lift weights and like get over it and fight back. It's kind of your fault for being too weak to handle it. Now, because you can say nasty things about people through any kind of social media, and it just keeps going. It just lingers, and like other people jump in on it, and parents will jump in, and, and like people can put up really nasty things about each other in the public eye, and it's very difficult because we didn't grow up like that, so I'm not really sure what the rules are supposed to be. And I was like, wow, I'm like, maybe report that to the police. I'm not really sure, and everything from just, rumors to things that are actually true but were private. Of course, there's photos. So nothing's private anymore. And for all the beauty that comes along with capturing moments and preserving them forever, there's a ugly underside of like people can easily try to, use things against you, like in perpetuity, something that you did think back to when you were younger, like say like full skinhead mode that you went through for a few months or something. Somebody takes a picture of that and it becomes a problem for you when you're trying to get a certain type of job later on.
No, I know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's why I had I never had my real name on Facebook for a while because I had been looking for a job, and some of the things I post on there, a prospective employer might not appreciate,
frown upon.
So,
which is a little bit too bad because you like to separate your identity and your being. I mean, sure, there's some things that I would maybe say right now if I didn't think that maybe a former student or even a current student might hear.
Right.
But there's a lot more good than bad that's come out of the ability to communicate so openly. I mean, the fact that this podcast is even being created is super cool. You're just going to be able to have this up online in a couple of days, and that's awesome. And I think that's there's so much more good that comes from it. But I am constantly reminding younger people, one of the things about being young is not having the ability to have foresight and how this might play out a couple of steps down the line. That impulsivity and, lack of just thinking into my future. Everything's right now. Into somebody who's 18, like they think 25 is your full-blown adult and I'm going to own a house and have kids by then, and they don't realize that's like 10 minutes away. Good luck. And then when they're 25, they're working in a restaurant and still like trying to sort out life. And older, like they think that the passage of time for them is a far different thing than it is. I remember that. I mean, we're talking about things like right now that are 30 years ago, which is crazy.
I know.
It's true. It's gone by so fast, it seems, in a lot of ways.
Definitely. And then now with all these shootings in school, that's going to be
it's a big issue. And a lot of people ask about it because, they know what I do. And of course I have political views and things like that, and I always try to leave those off to the side. Those are my views, and I don't try to push them on anybody else, and they formed through my life experience. So if somebody else's experience is different, I get that. And I work in a town, there's a lot of people who are pretty working class conservative, and there's a lot of gun owners and some of very good people who want to defend their homes and support their Second Amendment rights. But when it comes to schools, and there's a lot of people asking me my thoughts on, should teachers have guns in schools? And it's just something I can't agree with. Give me 5 cops in the school, but don't give me just regular citizens with guns. And I just don't think it's a good place for kids to learn either, is when it looks more like a prison. Like we have dogs coming through searching for drugs and weapons, and we have metal detectors. It's kind of playing into the culture of fear. I mean, school shootings are absolutely horrible. And we could lock down every school and we could do it like that, but then kids are scared to go to school. And that's a bad thing too. I don't know what the answers are, Christian. It's a very difficult issue, but I do know that people are scared, kids are scared, and they're getting sick of it happening. But how do we balance out, reasonable people who want to own guns and keep them out of people's hands who might have mental illness or even not mentally ill, just people who are inclined towards violence. Like I don't think everyone who does this is like mentally ill. They're just people who have
problems,
have anger issues or whatever it might be. And had no previous criminal records. So how do you filter out those people and keep guns out of their hands? And I don't think there's any laws we can pass to ensure that's going to happen.
Definitely.
So you end up punishing a lot of law-abiding people to try to catch those other couple of people. So I don't really know what the answer is, to be honest with you. But we practice drills. We're always looking at like, what's a safety plan? We have to consciously think about it. Whereas before, you would just react in the moment and it would be chaos. Now it's like, in a sad kind of a way, we're almost normalizing. All right, here's an active shooter drill that we have to do. We were supposed to do one yesterday, but it snowed. So we're going to be doing one soon. And then it's sad that you have to drill that with like little kids, and they don't understand any of this stuff yet. And from what I understand, they tell kids at that level, like, we're doing this because what if an animal gets in the school and we have to keep you safe. And it's really sad that they don't know that this is why we're doing it, because school shootings has become a thing.
It's scary.
Scary.
So to move on from I know
no, that's a valid topic. And like I said, a lot of people ask me about it, and it's completely, people have a lot of different views because everyone went to school.
Exactly.
But I will caution people who haven't been there in 30 years that it's a different game than it was back then. So that's the one thing where I just kind of say, okay, it's a little bit, because I'm still there. I'm still inside. So it's like I see what happens from that side of the wall every day. Yeah.
So once we set this interview up, I wanted to buy your book and read it before I got here, but Amazon screwed up, and
I have a copy for you, which I'll put in your hand.
I did eventually get it.
Oh, you did?
But it was like this week, so I didn't read it. But
you should have pulled it on there. I'm sorry that you're underprepared for this.
But when I went to look for it before I went on Amazon, I typed your name in. There's a website I found called Rate My Teacher.
Rate My Teacher.
And you were on there with a lot of great reviews.
Excellent.
There was one on there that said, great teacher, but gives too many papers.
Great teacher, but makes us work sometimes. Yeah, some of the I think kids probably went a little bit easier on me. Some people on there were brutal.
Yeah.
And I remember, I kind of forgot about that site. Kids don't use it as much anymore, but back when it first started, it was probably, 10 years ago or something like that. Kids would make like very personal attacks. They wouldn't say something about the teaching. They would say that lady's fat, or just say nasty things for no reason.
Right.
And some teachers, a group of teachers, tried to get the website shut down. But that was just blocked. They said it's free speech, and it's a little bit unfair because it's totally anonymous. But hey, if I was in high school, I would have let it rip too. So I had to kind of take it in stride. And then after a while, I saw that a lot of the criticisms were actually sort of on point. You could kind of go through and see who had sour grapes or what was, because kids seem to be. They would say, this teacher's fair, but they can be a little bit boring. They would try to they would give credit where it's due, then say what some of their gripes were. But then other ones, they would just flame a certain teacher.
Yeah, we never had that. We would just have you knew these 4 teachers were awful. And if you got at the beginning of the year and you found out you got them, you'd be like, fuck.
And if you had something bad to say, you wrote it on the bathroom wall.
Yeah. Or you draw a mustache on them in the yearbook or whatever. But yeah, so going into that, so you wrote a book.
I did.
And what is that about?
All right, the book is called The Factory, and what The Factory is referring to is the prison system, and particularly in Massachusetts. But what it is to kind of back up, to give the context for why I wrote it, because I'm not a writer, I'm not an author. I think I can write fine, but that's not what I do. I just like I'm not a musician. I played music for a long time, but I never called myself a musician ever. So I'm a writer in that same context as like I am, to the extent I'm a musician. It's something that I didn't let my limitations hold me back, and just I came across something that was a good story and it needed to be written in my view. So what that story was is that I have an uncle. He's my uncle by marriage, but he's very much part of my family, and I'm very close with him. He all growing up, he was in prison, and I never knew why, and I couldn't search it on the internet. It seemed to be something we didn't talk about much. And as I got older, I found out that he when he was young, he had been in a robbery, and that the guy he robbed a store with shot and killed a police officer when they were trying to escape. So they all got life sentences. And so he was serving a life sentence in Walpole State Prison here in Massachusetts, and he when I was probably in my early 20s, he escaped from prison. It was on TV. Wow. They interrupted the program, and it was a Halloween day. So they canceled Halloween down in your area. They canceled all the surrounding towns, and because dangerous felons on the loose and all that stuff. And so there was a lot of news articles about him in and around that time, and I read them all, and I learned a lot about him just in that short time. And then I was in college, and I worked in the microfilm lab in the basement of UMass. And so I used those dates to find the corresponding Boston Globe articles, Boston Herald, and I discovered all these things about him. And he just seemed like a fascinating person. I learned that he wasn't just an inmate, but that he was president of the Prisoners Union. They tried to legitimately unionize, and he was the head of that. And he, was negotiating with the governor's people and stuff in the lobby of Walpole State Prison. And that he was definitely an inmate leader. He was his IQ level was far higher than the average inmates. And so somebody who was in there for life, he, used that influence to, to be a bit of a pain in the ass, but to change policy for the better. The conditions in prisons were awful.
Yeah.
And he was in there in the early 70s when I think they had, 18 murders in a year or something insane like that.
Right.
He was right in the middle of all that mess, just complete, violence.
Yeah.
And so he escaped, and he was out on the street for about a month, and they caught him and they sent him back in, and they gave him solitary confinement. So he did 5 straight years in a room smaller than this dining room we're sitting in right now, and didn't come out. And while he was in there, he wrote his own legal appeal. He had tried to appeal before, but his lawyers weren't really helping him out, and he didn't have the resources. So in this tiny little room, he just used all that time. And fast forward to 2003, he got released. His appeal was successful. Like that he wrote himself. And he got his conviction overturned, and then it was 40 years after his original crime, so they didn't retry him. He just did a plea deal, which allowed him to walk out a free man after 41 years in prison. So he was sort of like this very interesting. It was like he was frozen in time. He went into 60s, prison like when Kennedy was president, and then comes out like in the 2000s, and hadn't used a cell phone, hadn't driven in all those years, and Boston was so dramatically different. And I talk about that a lot because I always thought that was a super fascinating story. And so when I met him, I asked, I had a legal background, and so I was looking through his papers and his motions, and it really blew me away because I understood the work that he had to do to get his case overturned. It's pretty amazing that without any, formal legal training, he was able to like craft, with a lot of different drafts and some input from people, but that he did that himself was a pretty amazing story. And so we became pretty close after that, and we always have been. But somewhere along the line, I was always like, I want to write an article. I want to kind of put together your whole story in writing so it's captured. But maybe like a magazine article, like a New Yorker length article or something. But I started researching it, and I started interviewing him, and the next thing I know, I have 300 pages. And there was always one more thing I had to throw in, and one more thing I had to throw in, and then it just kept growing and growing, and so that's how it culminated in, okay, well, we're obviously gonna to make it a full book. And so we got the book together. It took a long time, but we finally got it edited and got it out. And he speaks a lot. He just spoke at Harvard a number of times. Okay. He lives in Cambridge, so they kind of know he's an expert on corrections from the inside. And he's well spoken too. He puts on a good presentation. And they've brought him in a number of times, so he goes in, and those students will, they'll buy the book. And so the story is his story, but with kind of commentary on the policies that kept him there, and some of the things that he saw and how corrections has changed over time, and how it's become such a mess. How it's become something that's for example, the overuse of solitary confinement, and how it's just inhumane. I mean, the more I learned about solitary, as I never really thought about it too much. But I have visited several prisons now, and I have been inside a solitary cell, and I think within like 30 seconds I started to feel
panic,
different. That claustrophobia, and to be forced to be in there and not be able to come out, I can't imagine.
5 years.
I mean, it's pretty clear that that's torturous. And but that's the discretion of the the prison superintendent. So a judge can't say, Christian, you get 10 years of solitary. They just give you 10 years, and then if you act up while you're in it, that's their go-to move, is to put you in there. And when you have somebody in there who already has mental illness, it's like you're pouring gas on a fire. And then if their sentence expires while they're in there, they're straight to the street. And then they're living next door to you. And So he has a lot of great insight to that, and I learned so much kind of undertaking this massive project. But I wanted to give up several times. Because it was hard. It wasn't fun. It was interesting, but it wasn't always convenient with the rest of my life. But you do it because, like with music, you do it because you think it's important. It's not about making money. It's about creating something and then having it for other people, and maybe even if it's just a small amount of people, it's something for them to maybe see something differently or think a different way.
Yeah.
And some of the feedback I've gotten from people is just that, and that makes me super happy. Some people have read it and say, hey, I never really thought about that.
Right.
And then right there you just say, okay, mission accomplished. If I just got a couple of people, it wasn't going to be a New York Times bestseller. I never thought that. But I thought it was an interesting story. So even if you just like true crime, there's elements of that all throughout it. But then it kind of goes off into a direction where it's a little bit more academic about discussing some of these policy issues. So it's sort of several people told me like that's not going to work. You got to either make it about a human interest story about him, or it's got to be more of an academic piece. But I said, well, show me what the rules are. I don't really care. This is what I've got. This is what I'm going to put together and put out. So, maybe a traditional author might say that, make fun of it or say that it's not in the proper format. I don't care about any of that stuff. I wrote it, and that's the beauty of kind of doing it yourself. It's exactly how you want it to be. I didn't edit out a line because somebody else thought it didn't work.
That's what I was going to say. It definitely goes back to the DIY sort of ethic. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
But this is what I'm putting out there. This is this is my music, and I didn't try to do anything to make it more accessible or there was definitely like a whole bunch of prison war stories we could have told and marketed it as true crime. Just kind of like people love those stories. It explains the popularity of Prison Break and shows like Oz.
that. And Oz, those are fascinating shows. He broke out of prison 3 different times, and each one of them's a pretty amazing story, and they're all recounted in the book. I mean, those had to go in there. But it just showed that, he never gave up. He never just accepted that I'm here for life. He's like, no, I'm going to try to get out of here at any turn I can. And he did. And then, when you get further in, you'll see some of the things he did, and it's all backed up. I have all the news accounts.
Wow.
When he first told me, I was almost like, did this really happen? And completely verified all of them. So not just once, but 3 times.
So what were those interviews like when you first started doing that? Was he?
I didn't know him well, but he, there was a family bond, so we had a bit of trust there, and he knew that I genuinely cared about his story. I wasn't just trying to say, get stories that were entertaining to me. Like I wanted to know all of it. I wanted to know everything, and he told me a lot of stuff that didn't get recorded or written down. Stuff that I know he trusted me with, because of the type of life he led. And but he was always super, super honest. Never tried to make himself look cool or more important. In fact, he downplayed it, and other people kind of tipped me off to the fact that he had a different status than he said. And it's part of the reason he didn't just write an autobiography, because he said, I don't want to say some of these things about myself. It's better if someone else talks about you but he's heavily quoted throughout, as you already see in there. So we had we became very close. We did numerous 8-10 hour interviews all day, just turn on the recorder and just go.
Nice.
And I took a lot of just paring those down and organizing those. So if I were to ever do another book, I would know I could do it in probably half the time, because I know how to do it.
You've done it once.
I've done it now. I did everything the long way because I was just stumbling in the dark. But I figured a few things out along the way.
Without getting too much, because we'd rather have people read the book. But does he recount when the original crime happened? They all got life sentences. But he wasn't like a gunman. It was him and one other guy, and the other guy got away. The guy who shot the cop got away, and then he committed suicide a couple of days later when they were closing in on catching him. So he was the last man standing. So he was 21 years old, and they gave him a life sentence. And so there's something in Massachusetts, and this is in the book, the felony murder rule. And so if you and I go, we're driving around and I run into a store and rob it and kill somebody, you're part of that. So we're going to all be treated the same. And some people think that's unfair. He has, he had a murder conviction without, he never shot anyone. He never pulled the trigger. I mean, he did commit a robbery. He openly admits to that. And, that was something that, he had to live with, is that somebody was shot and killed, and that was never part of the plan. But it was a robbery that went bad. So some people have no sympathy for him. Other people say it's unfair. But when you look at
punishments fitting the crime. Like there are people who've murdered one or two people who did less time than him. So when you kind of look at that big context, you start to figure out like what's fair here.
Right.
Plus it was a police officer who died, so you knew it was going to be.
Oh yeah.
They still did have the death penalty at the time in Massachusetts, but they voted not to give it to him.
Right. Okay.
So he narrowly avoided the death penalty.
Wow.
Yeah, because they said, well, if he had actually shot him, he might have gotten it, but he didn't pull the trigger.
Right.
Yeah.
That was my other question. I was going to say, is the family of that officer?
Yes, so most people are still. They probably are. I know that when he was released, some of the family members did show up. That officer had 5 children or something like that, who were all older than you and I now.
At this point.
And they still have pretty strong feelings about it, from what I understand. So he had to do a lot of work to kind of come to peace with, he was going to make a statement addressing them, and then he just didn't do it. He felt like the most respectful thing was to just to not say anything. He said, no matter what I say, it's not gonna change anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it was pretty cool to do all that research, and then have the live subject in front of me to kind of match it all up with. It was really kind of neat.
Definitely.
Yeah. I enjoyed it. It was a long, hard process, but now that it's done, it's something to be proud of, and something that, like when you finish your band CD and you have it, and it might go on the shelf forever, but it's done.
Yeah. I know. I'm sort of getting that with these, doing this podcast. It's a little more work than I thought it was going to be, which is great, which is sort of why I wanted to do it. But each one I do is almost sort of like a minor. When my old bands would put out a record, a CD, and you'd be like, finished with this.
You up to 20 now? How many you got now?
The one next Tuesday will be the 20th.
That's awesome.
So, no,
I'm glad you're doing this too. It's a fantastic way for people to maybe hear from an old person around they haven't seen in a while, or if somebody I've never heard of, some of the people you've interviewed I've never heard before, but you kind of feel like you know them a little bit after you hear it, and it's nice.
I feel like a lot of people have similar stories, background stories, and from different worlds too, not necessarily hardcore. So that's kind of what I want to.
No, that's cool. This probably after we're done, I'll probably recommend a few people that you might talk to at some point. Yeah.
And so as far as the book, where can people get that?
They can get it. We have a Facebook page. It's on Twitter. The Factory, it's Facebook, and I put up a lot of things, a lot of links or anything that's relevant to the book. I usually put up the subject of the book. His name's Bobby DeLello. Whenever he speaks, I'll put a speaking date up there. I've put up video clips. There's a number of clips of him on YouTube speaking. And there's just the link for the book through Amazon is there. And when he speaks, we always bring books, and people can get it directly from me if they want to contact me directly, or just through the Factory website. But it is up on Amazon, so that's probably the easiest place to find it for anybody.
Cool.
Yeah.
And do your kids at school?
They're aware of it. They are definitely aware of it. I don't talk about it, but I also don't go out of my way to hide it. It's not like a a shameful thing, but since it does have it's heavy on the profanity and everything, I don't and I would never use a classroom to shill my product. Hey guys, check it out. This is on the curriculum now and you all have to buy it. Like college. But a couple of college classes have picked it up, which is cool.
Oh, cool.
And so that's pretty nice. But as far as the students of high school age, I wouldn't. But kids will find it and they buy it. That's up to them. And if they want to ask me about it, I'm happy to talk about it. But I don't ever use. I don't mix those two things.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for doing this, man.
It was a total pleasure. I'm so happy that to see you again. It's been a long time. It's
a good excuse to see old friends too.
Most definitely, and I was happy to do it. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
All right.